Okay, welcome everybody, and we are going to begin this class today. Today, actually, I'm focusing on gratitude. So, gratitude is actually a very important exercise. And the reason I'm focusing on gratitude is I actually had a very powerful experience with it. It says that according to Kabbalah, it's very interesting because it's the only time I ever saw the Rebbe kind of say something in a mimer, which was everything's usually Chassidus. Chassidus tells you to do something, but he says those that follow Kabbalah say thank you after every bite they take. So it's an interesting lashon, and of course it's similar to the lashon of our sages. Our sages say that a person should thank God for everything good that they have, and in fact, if you don't, it's like stealing. Furthermore, sages say that you should thank God after every breath you take. And we know that generally there are three kinds of brachas that are said. There are brachas that are said for good, like tidings, good news. Brachas that are said for like things of pleasure, and there are brachas that are said for mitzvahs. So there are brachas on like things that you hear, in fact, God forbid, even bad news. Things that you see, say you see a rainbow, or a cemetery, or you see the sea. And then there are brachas for mitzvahs, and there are brachas for food. And a bracha, effectively, quite simply, is saying thank you to Hashem for that thing. That's what a bracha is. So basically, it's really important um, to understand the importance of saying thank you. And I think a lot of us don't really appreciate why thank you really is the magic word. And the reason for this is that our sages teach us, or it's brought down in Chassidus, that a person can say Maida Ani. So you're not allowed to you say a prayer in the morning until you wash your hands because your hands are tummy. But you can say Maida Ani because Maida Ani is literally a um, Maida Ani, when you're saying thank you to Hashem, that's higher than any form of tumah. So in other words, when a person says thank you, they put themselves in a position, so Kabbalistically speaking, a person's in different dimensions. There are different dimensions to reality. Of course, there's only really one dimension, which is Hashem. But Hashem created many dimensions which we kind of exist in, and we can exist in any of these dimensions. Obviously, there's a difference between the dimension of heaven and earth. Heaven, you'd see more godliness, etc., and earth, not. Um, so there are things that you can do on earth that put you into higher dimensions. In fact, put you right in front of Hashem himself. And the most important thing that you could do is you could say thank you. We know a famous story that on the 18th birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, Eliyahu Hanavi appeared to him. Now, Eliyahu Hanavi was smiling. Now, he was used to seeing Eliyahu Hanavi, so it wasn't a shock for him to see Eliyahu Hanavi, but he was wondering why he was smiling. He thought maybe it's because of his big yichudim. Obviously, the Baal Shem Tov at 18 was super tzaddik, and he was doing yichudim, connecting different names of Hashem and different spheres and amazing stuff, bringing nachas to Hashem. And the Navi afterwards told him he's smiling because even though he's such a big tzaddik and he's doing all these yichudim, when I forgot who it was, Sarah Bela or Yankov and her husband Yankov, whatever, they're simple innkeepers, and every time somebody buys a drink from them, they say thank you to Hashem. They're so happy. Might have gotten the story drop off, but the content is correct. So they always express great gratitude to Hashem. He says to these people that are saying thank you to Hashem in their simple way is more beautiful, more important to Hashem than your great yichudim. And when the Baal Shem Tov heard this, he and the tzaddikim nestorim, they got together and they pasha went around. They did a mitzvah. Can you imagine tzaddikim nestorim? They had nothing better to do with their time. They went around and they literally would go to Jews and say, "How are you?" Now, when you go to a Jew and say, "How are you?" what does he say? He says, "Baruch Hashem." Thank God. And this they did to bring nachas to Hashem, because greater than all the Yechudim, you have to actually understand this, greater than the Yechudim, not of a regular tzaddik, of the Baal Shem Tov, even greater than his Yechudim is when you say thank you, a genuine thank you to Hashem. So this shows us that thank you is the magic word. And thank you is very, very important on something that's much deeper. I haven't really seen this In Chassidus, it's more something that I experience myself, but I think being that I experience it, there's certain truth to it. And that is that thank you is a very necessary thing as well. Why? Because everything that you do, I write about this in the first chapter of the book Kabbalah Love, everything that you do will automatically create within you a sense of ego. Now, when you feel a little egotistical, what's going to happen is it's taking you away from Hashem, it's putting you into your own pride. So the irony of the sense of ego is that ego is a certain sense of greatness, and it comes really from a sense that I can get my way, right? That's where the ego comes. That's why a king has a very big ego, because he can always get his way. I remember asking my brother-in-law, Chaim Chazan, a very bright guy. He was in a city, I won't mention the name of the city, but there's a famous oligarch. Oligarchs, these multi-millionaires or billionaires. And I asked him about this guy who happens to have become a Bat Shuvah and became a Frum Yid. So I said to him, tell me, what can you tell me about this guy? So he said, this is a guy that hasn't heard the word no in 20 years. And it was a very interesting description of someone, right? You wouldn't say, normally you wouldn't describe somebody like that, but that's a very brilliant description. Because a person who's used to getting their way, what happens? They become a little bit intolerant of not getting their way. And so we now have an interesting problem, because it's good to get your way, at least sometimes, certainly when it comes to something as simple as eating food. It's good to get your way, it's good to eat food. But every time you eat food, you pump up the ego, right? So every time you do something that's a kind of a pleasure to you, and there are many things that are pleasurable, this pumps up the ego. In fact, what is depression? Depression is when a person feels helpless and hopeless. That's depression. And that a friend of mine he has 3 medical degrees. He's a psychiatrist, an internist, and an endocrinologist. He told me that even animals can get depressed. If you take an animal, and God forbid, he's put in a circumstance where he's not able to really care for himself, so that animal can get depressed, and that animal will maybe lose his sense of pride, lose his ego. And then without the ego, we lose the drive to even get our way. We don't care about ourselves. And if we don't care about ourselves, then we don't even want to do what we want, which is, let's say, give ourselves pleasure. So we break the loop. And if we break the loop, we've got a big problem. But on the other hand, if you keep the loop unbroken, right, and you give yourself what you want, now you got another problem. Because now you become a person who feels that they're entitled. And now you're a person that wants even more. You're not comfortable not getting your way anymore. Right now, you want to get your way. So this is a dilemma that we have. And the only way, there's only one way, there's no other way to get rid of this dilemma. And in fact, I'll tell you, there's an entire school of psychology. Many people are not aware of this. But, Freud was an interesting character. Most of his theories have been proven not to be true. In fact, maybe all of his theories. But the big but is that he understood the concept of the subconscious. And that's why he was called the father of psychology. But there have been other people that followed along the path of trying to understand human nature and what they want. They say that Freud dug in the ground and he found worms, right? He was about the id, those that understand a little bit of this stuff. And they said, had he dug deeper, he would have found the yid, right? So in Hasidus, we don't say, oh, wow, just because you have, let's say, a sexual desire, you're bad. No, the body has that desire, but that is not who you are. You're a godly being. You want the world peace. You want an amazing world. You're spiritual. So, in fact, in the right way, in the right time, it's a good thing. So, in other words, there's a much deeper philosophy that exists. But the but is, there were many spin-offs of Freud. And these spin-offs, they ultimately, many of them had very, very good points. Some of the psychologists that I believe have very good points. One of them is this lady, Melanie Klein. And Melanie Klein was a Jewish lady, a disciple of Freud, and she created what's called Kleinian psychology. And her psychology is based on a very simple idea. Now, most psychology really has a fundamental error. The fundamental error is they're trying to create one band-aid on all illnesses, right? Imagine the medical field saying, okay, well, every single thing that goes wrong in the body, all you need to do is you chicken soup. Chicken soup, that's your solution to all things, right? So it's ridiculous. And the same thing is with most, mental illnesses. There are differences. There's a difference between a person with OCD and a person with, whatever, PTSD. There are different things, and different things need different treatments. But in any event, that's just a general idea. In fact, it's true to say that all, if you want to call it mental disturbance, is really based on anxiety. And a lot of the way of getting over anxiety is really through bitachon. There was a Harvard professor that he did a study, and basically reading Chovos HaLevavos is better than antidepressants, reading the Duty Gateway to the Trust. So, if a person, obviously, we have a nervous system, and when the nervous system goes into anxiety, it's very, very painful. I've been there, and it's not anything I'd wish on my worst enemy, but it's not so easy to get out of it. So, separate subject. Thank God, those of you that know, I have a special machine developed by NASA that really helped me, that can help others, and I'm happy to help people. But in any event, the main point that I want to bring out here is Melanie Klein. And Melanie Klein has a theory that all of our issues come from jealousy. Now, of course, she's wrong. Not all of our issues come from jealousy. Sometimes our issues come from anxiety. But be that as it may, her antidote to jealousy is gratitude. But what is very, very profound about Melanie Klein is that gratitude is the antidote to jealousy. Now, in fact, this goes very, very, very deep. There's a very great researcher. His name is John Gottman. Now, John Gottman is actually a religious Jew, and he's one of the foremost researchers into marriage. And for 20 years, he hooked up couples in what he called the Love Lab. They spent a weekend in his lab in Seattle, where he had his kind of, if you want to call it, his laboratory. It was more like a condo. But what he did is he measured people's blood pressures, and then he could measure if a person got anxious when their spouse said something, and he was really able to do a lot of very good research. And basically, he says a very fascinating thing, which I believe is true. He says, now we know 80% of divorces are initiated by women. But what happened, when the woman married the man, she was quite happy. She thought this is happily ever after. Certainly no woman gets married thinking I'm going to get divorced in 5 years. And that's usually what does happen. And usually she's the one that's making the divorce. So what exactly has happened? So he says in 80% of the cases, right, 80% of divorces come from women. And he says 80% of the reason people get divorced, he gives an example, is that Aaron and Linda got married, but now Linda is unhappy. She's not unhappy with Aaron, she's unhappy in life. And she begins to see faults in Aaron. Now that's very, very important. Why? Because when a person is feeling unhappy, which could actually be caused by anxiety, and then they can feel, why is it that you should be feeling this way, even whether it's once a month or what I don't know, a guy has a bad day at work, whatever it can be, a person can be feeling miserable. Now, we know misery loves company. Why does misery love company? Because it's not fair. Why should it be that you are feeling good while I am feeling bad? Now, nobody consciously thinks that. There's not a single person on the planet that thinks, it's not fair that they're feeling good and I'm feeling bad. But what they are feeling in their ego is that this is unfair because they're not better than me. In fact, maybe I'm even better than them, and they are happy and I am miserable. And so the brain wants to give you, just like you're not really conscious when you're hungry, maybe you are a little conscious when you're hungry, but you're not always conscious of why you're hungry. Maybe you're bored. Maybe it wasn't really hunger for food. Maybe it was just, like we sometimes eat. That's why one of the best ways to go on diet is just to be happy. Because often when we're not happy, we're eating to make ourselves feel better. We don't like to feel bad. So the brain will kind of do things for us that are things that we want, right? You don't think, oh, I have to go to the fridge now because really I'm a little lonely. And because I'm lonely, I'm not feeling good. And because I'm not feeling good, I want to eat an ice cream. No, you're like, fridge, ice cream, right? It's pretty simple. So the point is that sometimes our brain gets us to places that we want to go, but we don't even know why we want it. and why we want to go there. And jealousy is a very dangerous thing. In fact, it's interesting, the only emotion that God regulates in the Ten Commandments is do not be jealous, right? He doesn't say love your friend as much as yourself in the Ten Commandments. He says don't be jealous. Why? Because the first 10 commandments are positive things you have to do, and the second 10 commandments are things to stay away from. And jealousy is something that we have to stay away from. But the question is, how do you stay away from it? Because if by nature, when you get miserable, you will get jealous of the people that are not miserable and then attempt to make them miserable by seeing what's wrong in them and criticizing them for it so they can feel anxious and on edge as well. And I'm sure many people can identify by receiving this and maybe even giving it in some point of their life. And remember, I went through, unfortunately, a very difficult time in my life. And it's very interesting because it was like when I went through that town, I saw a lot of bad in other people. Now, the same people I didn't see bad in them before, and I don't see bad in them now. So the reason I was seeing bad in them, and it's very interesting because Kabbalah Hasidus brings this down, is that every single person in the universe has good and bad in them. And so if we all have good and bad in us, so the story of life is that technically what I'm seeing in the other is in a certain sense a reflection of what I want to see. So if I'm seeing in the other something that is not so good, it's very much a reflection of the fact that there's a part of me that is kind of not not happy, and it's kind of an excuse to, God forbid, put someone else down. So just for those that kind of joined the class recently, this is a class about gratitude, and then we're just going into some of the things that cause a person to get away from it, and misery is kind of one of them. And we're speaking about Melanie Klein, who was a disciple of Freud, and she was a very bright woman. And long story short, she says that jealousy is a problem and gratitude is the answer. So the great question in life is, why is gratitude the answer? How does gratitude help you? And getting back to what this guy John Gottman says, he said very interesting is in his book. He writes, I'm a Jew, and I see that Jewish prayers are not about asking God so much for what you want, but basically, if you look at our prayers, most of it is about gratitude, thanking Hashem. Hashem, you're so great. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We get up, we say brachas, we say thank you. As I said before, we have brachas for, you have brachas for food. Thank you. It says technically every time you eat, you say thank you. It's so important. Why? Why is gratitude so important? And the answer is, hold on just 1 second, please. I'm going to take a drink of water. Thank you. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you again. So, why is gratitude so important? Because gratitude takes away the ego of the event. So, if you go out, just a simple example, you go out to a nice restaurant, right? And you order your favorite food. Now you're feeling like a king. Wow. Look at me. Meaning, it's not on a conscious level you're feeling like a king, but on a subconscious level. That's why they're selling nice cars and they're giving first class tickets and they're making very beautiful homes. It's all to give that person that feeling like, wow, I'm like a king. And so when a person has that feeling, their little ego in them is like, yay, look at me, I'm amazing. And so that is a very good feeling. I had a friend, interesting guy, so he said that he has what he calls a neon light theory. Everybody wants their name on neon lights, right? Like if I say to you, there's an Arab. he wrote his name in the sand, I don't know, in the desert somewhere, and so big that you could see it from space. So he wants the Martians to know that he exists. Baruch Hashem. But when you say thank you, what are you effectively doing? You're saying, I didn't give this to me, you gave it to me. In England, it's this terminology, it's called much obliged. Like I'm very, like I'm even obligated to you. So the idea of saying thank you is a very, very profound idea, because what it really has this amazing capacity to do, it has the capacity to break the ego of everything. So if you take a drink of water and you say thank you, and you take some food and you say thank you, and you, whatever you have, you say thank you, and you should stop, and maybe we'll do a meditation to help us do this, but literally say thank you for everything that you didn't say thank you for. what you're going to see, and particularly if you say thank you 5 times, because sometimes one time isn't enough, it doesn't really download. What you're going to see is that your whole life will be happy. Because the more we have, the more we expect. The more we expect, the less we have. Again, the more we have, the more we expect. The more we expect, the less we have. Because you can never fulfill your imagination's expectations. But the less we have, the less we expect. The less we expect, the more we have. Again, the less we have, the less we expect. The less we expect, the more we have. And so, ironically, it's so critical to say thank you because, on one hand, it's good to have more stuff, but only if you say thank you. Because if you don't say thank you, instead of the more stuff making you happy, the more stuff makes you miserable. And it's very clear. I mean, I don't know about studies, but I think that the more people have, usually, the more miserable they are. Now, it's not to say that not having is a great option, but it's saying that having does not make people happy. That's for sure. Gratitude for what we do have makes a person happy. So, again, we have this kind of dilemma, which is that on one hand, we want to achieve, we want to succeed, and certainly we need to eat, etc., etc. But on the other hand, we need to say thank you for every single thing that we have. Because if we don't, every single thing that we have, instead of becoming a blessing, it actually becomes a curse. And that is what Hashem said. See, I've placed before you today the blessing and the curse. The blessing, if I can rephrase it, the blessing is saying a blessing. The blessing is saying thank you. When you say thank you to Hashem, what will ultimately happen is you will actually become grateful for what you have. And when you're grateful for what you have becomes a blessing. You know, I've mentioned this before, but the famous song, Ojo Teretov, Ojo Teretov, is based on a letter of the Rebbe. The Rebbe says that it's going to be good and it's going to be even better, but he says one thing that isn't in the song. He says, and you have to say thank you for what you have. And I mentioned this before, which is that the Rebbe, actually, I saw this letter where the Rebbe writes to someone, and only the Rebbe could write this. The Rebbe says, Hashem is waiting for you to be grateful for the blessings that you already have before he gives you more. So that's a fascinating thing that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who had this kind of insight, could say that the Rebbe is that Hashem is actually waiting for you to be more grateful before he is going to give you even more stuff. So, so what I want to do is I want to do a little meditation. And this meditation will help us on gratitude, and it will bring us to a point where we could really be grateful for everything. And once you hit that level of gratitude for everything, first of all, you deserve to have more, but second of all, you're going to be happy with what you have. Okay, so take a deep breath, as I like to say now if you're driving. Close your eyes and breathe in gratitude. Breathe in what you're grateful for. Another kind, if you want to call it meditation, that I came up with today, which is really, really powerful, is think about the people that are lovely. Think about people that are really nice. Think about a couple of people that are really nice. And the reason that's important is because a lot of times we have resentment in our heart. You know, we loved and somebody might have hated us or somebody was mean to us, and then we kind of back off of people. But that's a very sad place to be because we all are social animals. We all need people. Okay, so getting back to this meditation, I want you to think about who you are grateful for in your life. Einstein, in fact, said that the meaning of life is to give to those whose happiness you are dependent on, that they give to you joy. Who gives you joy? And so now be grateful for them and what they do for you, and think about what you can do for them. So this is really important. Think about what gave you in the past joy that you might have not been grateful for, which you want to express gratitude for now. So what gave you in the past joy, and you want to be grateful for it now. So again, what gave you gratitude in the past? Maybe it was your parents when you were a child. You want to be grateful for that now. When you were a child, you expected it. You didn't say thank you, but you could say thank you now. Thank you, Tati. Thank you, Mommy. You can say thank you for what they have given you, and be grateful for that. Maybe you had an older brother that was important and that helped you. Thank you. And maybe you had a sibling that you loved. Thank you. And what about friends? Friends are so important. Say thank you, thank you. And you can see that as you do this, every single thing that you can say thank you for, it shifts the relationship. It shifts it away from ego and expectation to true love without expectation, to gratitude. Gratitude gives you true love. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on the class today. It's really just a short class. It's about gratitude. And of course, in Yiddishkeit is all about gratitude. It's a gratitude religion. We're still grateful that God took us out of Egypt, even though there was a Holocaust. And it's interesting. I remember my grandfather once sitting at his table, and he was like, unfortunately, he kind of is a survivor. And he was saying that he was really grateful. I think he was there by the Warsaw bombing, and then he went to visit his mother in the shtetl. And he was grateful that his mother was alive. He was grateful. His mother was murdered later. But he was grateful that she was there, she was alive. His level, and throughout his life, his level of gratitude to God was unbelievable. My other grandfather was I remember he once got off a plane. He had very serious feet issues. And he was like, thank you. He was saying under his breath, thank you to Hashem that it wasn't so painful. These were very great people. They understood to be grateful. You see this a lot by the Sephardic Jews, if I may say. Tremendous gratitude, everything that they have. They're thankful to Hashem and tremendous joy from that. They're very happy people. You can't blame Ashkenazic Jews. Many of them went through a Holocaust, and it's hard to be too grateful after that. But definitely the Jewish way is gratitude. And so we have to be very open to understanding that not everybody is grateful in life. Many people are going through very painful things, and it's difficult for them. And so we can't expect them to always be joyous. We have to be joyous to them and for them. But there are other people that actually have tremendous blessings in life. And the only thing that they're missing in life is really just waking up in the morning and saying thank you. And one of the things that's really changed my life is every time I wake up in the morning, I count my blessings. I count about 10 things I'm grateful for. And as I always like to say, if you turn off the media and you count your blessings, you will be happy within 2 weeks. It's not even a question. Turn off the media and count your blessings, you'll be happy. Of course, that's the whole idea of davening, but we have to daven. And when we eat, say thank you. If you really want it to go down well, say thank you 5 times. When you drink, say thank you. Anything that comes to you, say thank you. Eliezer was the first shliach, the first messenger. The first thing he did is it worked. He said thank you to Hashem. And this is what it means to be a Jew. A Yehudi is somebody that says thank you. A person that can't say thank you, that's a goy. That's the opposite of a Jew. That's somebody, that's Esav. He's like, whatever I got, I deserved, and now I deserve more. That is a very, very bad trait. And a person that has that trait can never be happy, because even if they get more, then they're going to want more from that. They'll never be happy. Again, as we said before, the simple equation is the more you have, the more you want. The more you want, the less you have. The less you have, the less you expect. The less you expect, the more you have. And so ultimately, the best equation is that we should be grateful for having more. And God sees, oh, wow, Boitchikol or Meidele, you're such a good boy, you're such a good girl, you know how to be grateful for what you have. Let me give you more. And then you're Hashem, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He says, let me give you more. Let me give you. And that's the real relationship with God. L'chaim v'levracha.